Hi, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Glenn, what was the top story for you?
Fake news.
Oh, okay.
Resistance protesters that really stuck it to Trump in a big way.
Oh, wow. All right, Jason.
The largest military exercise Russia has done since they were the Soviet Union, going on right now.
Wait, you're doing something on Russia?
Imagine that, right?
Huh.
Never happens.
Yeah, crazy. All right, fake news. Actually, you know what? I keep forgetting before we get into this.
Oh my gosh.
Our sponsor. We have to thank them. We have to thank the sponsor.
Okay.
Brick House. So they've got Field of Greens, which is, of course, the best way to get your fruits and vegetables.
Where is my Field of Greens? Where's my glass of Field of Greens?
Yeah, you should have brought something to mix it into
Should I
something
have done
really, really
that?
good.
You should have done that.
That would have been a good idea.
I feel like
We
you're-
have to come up with these ideas.
I feel like you're saying that to me because I'm a woman.
Oh my gosh.
No, I mean,
To do the food and
little
the drink.
Philly, if you just get into the kitchen and wrestle up some greens for us.
What year is it?
They also have Dawn to Dusk.
Yes.
As I was telling Stu, I know Stu has used that.
Yeah.
I just had it for the first time earlier. So
Nice.
we're going to see how it is live on air if I just start jittering and just shake
definitely
off
won't
the
work.
chair.
That's why it's great, though. It doesn't give you that feeling. Because some of those things can. I mean,
I've had once Red Bull from you. I about vibrated off the stage.
Yeah, no, that's the best part about Dawn to Dusk, because you don't have to get that feeling and you can still get the boost of energy. And the Field of Greens is great because you don't have to you can eat your vegetables without having to eat your vegetables.
Shut up. You like vegetables. You're vegetarian.
I do.
I'm a vegetarian that doesn't really like vegetables all that much, so it's weird.
Isn't that funny?
What's that leave you with?
Pizza. Largely.
I do love my vegetables, and I get double vegetables because I'll eat my vegetables and then I'll drink my vegetables later.
Stop bragging.
Shut up.
It's unbelievable.
All right, okay, well, go to BrickHouseBlaze.com and use promo code GREENS, and you can get 15% off of your first order, or you can text GREENS to 41411. Fake news.
Fake news. Leading with a story that we're actually going to do tomorrow on radio, and it is about fake news unlike anything I've ever seen. It comes from the Financial Times, and it is about something that, Stu, how long have I talked about this?
Oh, I mean, since 2007?
Yeah.
2008?
And maybe 6 or 7, because the crash happened. And leading up to it, I was talking about there is no way that these financial gurus do not know. There's no way that the press who covers Bloomberg, that they don't know this thing is going to come apart. Now, I'm a self-educated guy on the economy and the money system and banking and everything else, and I knew it. Now, the first thing was, okay, maybe they know something I don't know. And the next excuse was, well, they know of all of the systems that are there, or they're blind to it because they're too close to it. Bullcrap. They knew. The Financial Times ran a story today that talked about how one of their reporters down in Wall Street, the banks were starting to collapse. Lehman Brothers. He went in, he knew what this meant. And he went in, what was it, to Citibank? And there was a legitimate run on the banks. It was all of the Wall Street traders. And they were all taking their money out because many of them had, $250,000 plus. So FDIC would only go for $250,000.
It wasn't even back then. It was $100,000.
$100,000.
Yeah, it was
okay.
before they upped it.
So what these guys were doing was they were taking their money out and they were putting it in other banks. It was a legitimate run on the bank. Citibank said, wait, don't do that. Just put it in the name of your children. How many children do you have? Put some in your wife. Spread it out. We'll give you 6 accounts. Okay? But it was a legitimate run on the bank. This reporter was there, and he said, I got to call the photographer. They went down. They took pictures of this run on the bank, and then they did nothing with it. And the idea was, I can't tell the American people what's really going on. I can't let them know that information because that'll only make things worse. The guy now feels so guilty about it. He's coming clean because he says it's worse because nothing was fixed, because we didn't let them collapse, because nothing was fixed. It's worse what's about to come. And he said, this time, I won't shut my mouth.
Wow.
I mean, I can see it being a difficult decision, right? I mean, his point was, if I take pictures in the middle of a Manhattan Wall Street bank, in the middle of a run on it, it will cause a run on every bank in America, and our entire financial system could be destroyed.
How many times did we have people, this is when I was at CNN, that I'd have very big financial people, and they would off the air say, you're exactly right, keep going, you're exactly right. You may not know why you're right, so let me explain this, this, and this. That's why this is right. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, you'll go on the air with me? Oh, God, no. No, I'm not going to say any of that. They all stuck me out. I had a guy who was with the Fed at the time of the bailout, called me that night, and he would call me all the time because he felt it was immoral that someone wouldn't warn the people, but he couldn't because of his fiduciary responsibility. He was the only one. You said
that this guy just came out?
Yeah, yeah, Financial Times.
Because I was going to say, I haven't heard.
Oh, no, you
You know, I mean, you're not going to see that anywhere in mainstream media.
And you won't hear about it, I'm convinced, because it's in a financial newspaper, and he's warning about what's coming now.
What is he saying is coming now?
He's saying now the bond market is everything's so out of whack that pensions are going to be destroyed. And he said, this is much bigger than the banking crisis. This is the pension crisis. And he says it's going to collapse globally. And he said anybody who, thought that they were going to have any money for retirement, it's all gone.
We did a show not too long ago just about what the Fed has been doing. I think it was like a month or so ago when we did the show. And all the money that was off the books, that wasn't even a part of the bailout, but it was all just getting printed, like record amounts of printed money that was just completely off the books. And a lot of that money that was supposed to go to fix the issues that caused the 2008 financial crisis weren't going to actually fix the issues. In fact, this is one of the craziest things we learned. Before, you couldn't make money, like if a bank like Citi or whatever, they have to have a certain amount like that's in reserve at the Fed. And they all did like the minimum that they had to have. But they didn't make interest on that money. So if they put it in there, they weren't making money. It was just straight up. It was just in reserve in case of a holy crap type button. Well, they switched that right when they were writing up the bailout, and they said, okay, well now you can make interest on money you put in there. So they were throwing in billions of dollars into the Fed that was just sitting there making money, and they weren't fixing any issues. So, like, if the problems that were started back then,
yes, but yes and no. This is really complex. We don't need to get into this, but that's called mark to market. What the biggest problem was, we did not mark to market, and it took me a while to understand this. If you're the banking system and you're holding all of these loans, and all of a sudden the housing market collapses, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to look at all of your holdings and say, I'm going to mark these to market now. So I'm holding a loan for $1 million. It's only worth $200,000 now. So I lose, as the bank, $800,000 in liquidity, in me being able to go get a loan from the Fed and say, look, I have this much money in the bank. So what they did is they took all of these loans, and because they didn't mark to market, they were sitting there with garbage and saying that there were so much money, but they weren't. And so I'm guessing that they allowed them to take that money, put it into the Fed, grow interest, which would pay them that money in a clandestine way to make up between the 200,000 to the million.
But where I get fuzzy is, so printing money in excess is bad. Record amounts of printed money since 2008 up to now. I don't remember what the actual amount is, but it's insane.
No, it's anywhere between $4 and $9 trillion.
So the Fed was printing money to bail out these banks, which they are then putting it into the Fed, which they're so the money they printed is already bad in excess. And they're putting that money in there, which it's accumulating its own money. Mm-hmm. From the Fed.
Problem. I do not see a problem. It seems like it's going to work out well.
That's really bad.
One of the interesting things, too, about that was that at the end, the author of the story said, in retrospect, he thought it was the right decision not to pass that off to the American people. And think about how weird that is, where people on Wall Street, reporters on Wall Street, are protecting their money and not telling you so that you can protect yours. Now, it wound up working out where I guess it didn't completely collapse. So maybe you look back at that and say it was a good thing, but that's a weird precedent. And I don't see how that's journalistically ethical.
You're not allowing collapse to happen. That's the difference between communism and capitalism, according to, Stalin's chief economic advisor. What makes capitalism strong is it allows for things to go back into winter and let them collapse because they failed. We didn't let this collapse. We built a house of cards on a ship made of cards on a trolley that is going down, a snaking road in San Francisco. It's not going to.
Milton Friedman talks about this a lot, really quick. Milton Friedman talks about that, and he's also he talks about the importance of letting things crash and letting things fail. Not only is it it's bad when it happens, you have to suffer through it, but you innovate, you change, you get better. And if you always prop things up, you never change, you never innovate.
Right. Creative destruction.
Yeah. Stu, someone stuck it to Trump. The news and why it matters. Go.
Okay, big time in Trump's face on this one. Professor, not a fan of Trump, went into the bathroom. And put a $100 bill, taped it to the mirror, and said, "This is for the janitor," and then took out a gun, and then shot himself in the arm to stick it to Trump. And man, Trump felt that one. Yeah, it's unclear whether he was actually trying to kill himself and chickened out or screwed up.
Because that's a really bad shot.
If you're aiming for your head and you hit your forearm.
Yeah, I mean,
it's probably a liberal, so they don't have good. He never shot a gun.
Just went off.
But that is actually a real story that happened, and so he's okay. I guess he's going to make it.
Good.
But he did tell people that he was doing it to show Trump up or stick it to Trump. So I think that's where most conservatives kind of went with it. How ridiculous it is that this guy thinks he's really getting Trump by shooting himself. Like, that's not a good way. If he would have shot himself in the foot, it would have made more sense. So I kind of think that's funny and a funny angle. Another part of it that's interesting, though, is that by now, that lives inside of the school shooting database for the year.
Yes, it does.
Because it happened at a college.
Oh, my gosh.
And he shot himself to raise the numbers. Now,
I think he did.
When you hear that, there's been 400 school shootings this year, it's stuff like that that's included to get to those numbers. And the fact that some liberal professor, to protest Trump, shoots himself in the arm in the bathroom of a college, gets onto the school shooter list, shows how completely ridiculous these numbers are.
Oh, my God.
It's interesting, too, down that road of because this is the way they manipulate this to go after people's guns. There's this huge number of school shootings that we know aren't real. This is something we should watch, Glenn, and I think maybe we should cover more in depth on radio because I know we're a little short on time here, is that California is now moving for excess regulations on bullets. They're going after the bullets instead of the guns. Oh, you can buy your gun, sure, but bullets are going to be gigantic, much more expensive, and they're going to be impossible for you to get, and you can only get a few at a time, and you can't get this type, and you can't get this type, and you can't get this type. They're trying that out.
Progressivism, it is what's his name from Harvard, the guy who Nudge.
Oh, Cass Sunstein.
Mm-hmm. That's Nudge.
It's a pain in the butt. I have a gun, but I can't even buy bullets. Why would I bother, right?
Yeah.
And they try to nudge you out of that lifestyle, get you away from that Second Amendment.
Is it a crime to hold a certain amount or just to buy a certain amount?
Both.
So could you reload and do all this on your own and get around it?
Well, they're saying it's not even. It's just the purchase of them in the first place that they're going after.
I think they all need to be serial numbered.
Yes, that's another thing they're trying to do is put serial numbers on every bullet that you fire. That the gun has something in it that stamps the bullet as you fire it, so that every single bullet can be traced back to the gun. They're just trying, and then they're trying to restrict and infringe the right to bear arms, which is not allowed in this country unless you amend the Constitution. You can go for it if you want, but it's going to be a tough road.
Yeah. All right, back in a minute.
That's what people do. You're telling me one thing.
Got a lot more to get into, but before we get started, I want to thank our TV and podcast sponsor, Riduzone. This little bottle, I promise you, I have about 5 in different areas of my life. So I carry one in both of my purses, and I have one at home, and I have one at the office so that I'm never without it. I know we've gone over this before, but it used to be a little bit heavier, chunky, maybe just a little bit of meat on the bones.
She's the Texas
number 10. Yes, number 10. You didn't know they made font that big, but they do. So
crazy. It doesn't even look like you.
I know. I get that a lot. It's funny when I'll see someone from high school in the grocery store, and I'm like, I don't have to have an awkward conversation because you don't know who I am. But so, I lost all this weight, but, you still have problems with metabolism when you get to a certain age, or, you just are constantly craving things. So I have found that this has really, really helped for me control my cravings. It gives me the extra boost in metabolism. I don't usually have time to work out just because I don't know if you two know.
We do. We're at the gym all the time, but I can understand how you can't make it.
We have this boss, and he's kind of like a work.
Yeah, I've noticed that. About him.
Cracks the whip, and so I don't have time to work out.
He's a jerk.
But of course, working out is essential, but I don't have that much time to. So if you're like me and you just need a little bit of an extra boost, please order this. It is riduzone.com, and you can get 30% off of a 3-pack, which is a 3-month supply. That's 3 whole months, 30% off. Use promo code TheBlaze. Jason, tell us about Russia.
So I think it was 1981. There was a gigantic Russian, or actually Soviet military exercise. I think it was called Zapad, and they still do variants of Zapad. But back then it was huge. It was the largest mobilization, I think, ever for the Soviet Union.
It was on the in Eastern Europe, right?
Yeah. I think actually Zapad means east. Mm-hmm. But it was huge, and it freaked NATO out, freaked everyone out. You can still see, there's videos of Zapad back in '81 where you can see where they have tanks spread as far as the eye can see. I mean, it literally looks like the end of the world scenario right before the nukes come flying in.
I remember, it was the response to Reagan. Reagan was
just elected.
Yeah, he was just elected. He had, saber rattled, and they wanted to send a strong message. Okay, your new president? Yeah, well, look what we can do. And it was terrifying at the time.
So now, with that in perspective, in that context, Russia right now is doing an exercise that dwarfs the size of Zapad 81. It's over 300,000 actual manned troops. Tens of thousands of tanks, APCs. It would put those videos back in '81 to shame as how much equipment is out there. Around 2,000 aircraft. I mean, you can just imagine. You can hardly walk in this area anywhere within hundreds of miles without probably bumping into some part of this exercise. It's nuts. But probably one of the even scarier things on this, or more, well, not scary, but more alarming, is that there's over 3,000 Chinese troops that are also cooperating with and involved with this exercise. They've done a few things where they've cooperated in the past, but nothing of this scale. And actually, China has never deployed their military in this size before, ever. I mean, beyond the Vietnam War or something like that.
There's a couple things. First of all, the Chinese military, is changing, and by 2020, the whole structure of China is going to be different. Is it not?
If you mean larger and more scary?
For the military.
If their economy can hold, which is questionable.
Right. So, but the other thing is, I think, just like in '81, Donald Trump is projecting strength against China with trade, also with Russia. England is projecting strength. So we know why Russia is doing it, to project strength back, just like they did in '81. And I think China is sending a message to Donald Trump, hey, you know what? If we join them, you guys are totally screwed.
Exactly right.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, this is another commercial, I believe, for my personal philosophy, to ignore everything that Donald Trump says or tweets. Because if you ignore everything Donald Trump says or tweets about Russia, they've been pretty tough on Russia. The Trump administration has been pretty aggressive with Russia. Sure. They just put new sanctions on, and I think this might be a reaction of the way that that relationship has gone. And I think that's the right move, to be tough on them. You get this impression from Trump when he talks about how much he likes them and how Vladimir is such a good guy and so smart. But I mean, if you ignore all that and you just see it, what have they actually done? What they have done has been fairly aggressive. I mean, certainly a lot of this is Mattis and other people in the administration, but I mean, what do you care what he's tweeting and what he's saying at press conferences? What he's actually doing is fairly aggressive with Russia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on. I think that if you look at the relationship between Russia and China, they have no real reason to stay allies. They don't. Historically, they've butted heads. They're in big-time competition right basically where China ends and like Kazakhstan, all those places that used to be the Soviet Union come together. So they're competitors. So the only real reason they're doing it now is basically because they have a common enemy in the United States. We're pissing China off. We're pissing Russia off. We'll always piss Russia off. I think in the future, I have a little more optimistic, view on our relationship with China. I think that we have every reason to cooperate. We both benefit hugely from, is that a word?
Bigly?
Bigly. That's the better way to put it. We both benefit bigly from free trade, open markets back and forth across the Pacific. That's tons and tons of money. It's just going to take the right leader to be able to communicate that with China and to harness it. But in the future, I think our relationship with China is not scary. It's actually positive.
Stu, there was a viral photo that came out from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I mean, as Hurricane Florence is about to hit North Carolina, South Carolina, it's amazing. We forget about Puerto Rico, and there's that it was really a disaster of epic proportions. Some reports say 3,000 people died there. We can go over those numbers, but this just came out, and this has now been confirmed by FEMA. That this is accurate, this is real. This is an entire runway. What you see there are millions of bottles of water that never got to anyone. They're just sitting currently on a runway in Puerto Rico. Some of these pictures, I mean, you can kind of get the scale of it as you cycle through these pictures. But look at that. I mean, look at how many bottles that
The entire runway.
The entire runway was covered, and maybe they got 20% of the bottles actually distributed to people.
So whose fault is that?
We don't know yet. We know that FEMA did confirm that that's what it was. So I'm assuming that it's a FEMA project. I haven't seen.
But did FEMA were they supposed to just deliver them to the airport?
Like, was there someone in Puerto Rico that was supposed to then distribute?
Again, Puerto Rico is, these are American citizens. I feel like a lot of people look at this and say, hey, it's almost like it's another country. Well, it's not another country. These people vote in our elections. They're American citizens. The fact that the idea that 3,000 people died is used, I think, a little bit too much as a fact at this point, because what it basically is they did a study to the excess amount of people who died in that year. So like if normally, let's say 100,000 people died, they saw 103,000 people died in that year, so they attributed those extra deaths to...
Not accurate.
Right, it's not accurate, but we do know it's a lot more than 60 or 65, which is what the government is actually reporting. So it probably is, it could be more than 3,000, honestly. But the number 3,000 is a little bit more, it's a little bit more shaky than I think a lot of the news organizations are saying. But we know it was really, really bad. We know that areas have gone months and months and months without power. And the fact that, people could be struggling and potentially thousands of people dying while there's that millions of bottles of water sitting on a runway with anyone could have just taken them, and they're just sitting there. It's just really depressing.
So what do you think of this, just off the top of my head, that this is probably the way government would treat all of us if there wasn't television and there weren't others to come and help. The problem, we tried to get to Puerto Rico. We couldn't get to Puerto Rico because you had to have special government permission to land or have a ship or whatever. So the average person couldn't help. So this is what U.S. aid looks like without the regular people.
And Texas is the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And people are really jumping to help, and we're able to make a big difference.
You couldn't
there.
in Puerto Rico.
Yep.
All right, back in a minute.
What's the government holdup for allowing people?
the government would have
Len,
approved.
I hear that you have something going on tonight.
Actually,
Oh, is it tonight
tomorrow
or tomorrow?
Tomorrow
Okay,
night, Thursday
tomorrow?
night, 8 o'clock is a virtual signing because I can't make it all across the country for the
can't?
book. No, I can't. We are doing a tour in, 12, 15 cities. And you can check out and grab your tickets for the tour at glennbeck.com. But also sign up. I'm going to be taking questions live tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, signing your book and shipping it off to you.
The book comes out September 18th.
Yes, next week.
All right, we're going into overtime. See you there.